Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real Shot 256 here with another edition of the Evening Crypto Cast. And tonight I want to just really go over some charts. Really, there hasn't been enough news going around or anything worthwhile. So just going to take a look at the charts and see what they're telling us. And it'll take. I do want to take a look at gold because it's something that I've been talking about in my prior videos, and it's something that I definitely want to keep a close eye on because it usually does give you a sign of the times on these financial markets. So I definitely want to take a quick, brief look at that and give you my take on what's been going on with gold in particular, and how it relates to world currencies. So without further ado, let's get started here. We're looking at a market cap of 323 billion. We've been trading around 73 billion in the last 24 hours, and we do keep seeing this Bitcoin dominance percentage here stay in in these high numbers, right? 62.5% Bitcoin dominance as of July 5th, 2019. It is a Friday evening here in the West Coast of the United States. Happy 4th of July. Hope you enjoyed the holiday if you're in these states. And hopefully you didn't you didn't lose a finger or something like that. If you did, definitely let us know in the comments. We'd like to know how you're doing. Hopefully you're still intact. Um, but um, but yeah, just let's just get into the charts right now and take a look at what's going on with gold. Um, Donald Trump, coming out and saying that China and Europe are playing big currency manipulation games and pumping money into their systems in order to compete with the the US dollar, and just going back and saying we should match or continue being the dummies who stick back and politely watch as other countries continue to play their games as they have for many years. And so, I mean, it kind of is telling that he's tempted to play these currency manipulation games and just go into that game with Europe and China, and perhaps maybe Russia as well, and just manipulate the dollar. And when you say stuff like that, the markets react because traditional markets are more, in my opinion, more susceptible to that news, in particular gold, because it is a sort of a store of value, and traditionally people will maybe fluctuate to a more stable asset in essence of something like that maybe playing out. So we did see that he tweeted that on July 3rd, and look at the price of gold react to it. Again, I'm not 100% correlating this move in gold because it could also be a consolidation, right? I mean, kind of painting a bull flag here too, as well. We'll take a look at this, kind of sort of painting a descending wedge or bull flag, if you will. Um, and so, I mean, it could be considered as consolidation too, but I mean, from July 3rd onto July, I'm sorry, from July 3rd onto July 5th, you see a pretty sizable drop in the price of gold, to where did it open up actually? It looks like it um, opened at 131.45. So right around here is where it opened up, right where my cursor is. Um, and so let's see, let's do a little bit of a measure here. Uh, Take a look and see where it opened up. So 1.75, which in traditional markets, it's something that traditionalists do consider as a considerable move. It's not 4 or 5% or anything like that, but in these markets, again, it's a considerable move here. So just something that again I've been paying attention to because with these manipulative games that countries are playing, again, people will flock to gold. And I was telling you guys in prior videos that there's something going on where gold is looking more and more attractive for traditionalists and people who typically, like to hedge with gold. And savvy investors are kind of, noticing a trend or noticing something going on with currencies or things going on with our economy that would cause them to look at gold again and consider buying more into it. And we see here with this prior move, all of a sudden, gold popping. We'll just measure this move right here, 4% in a matter of 2 days and 2 hours. That's not a very typical move. And if we do measure the full move here, from here to this top here, that's 7.2%, right? In about a week's worth of trading. That's a significant um, hike in price in gold for such a low amount of time. I mean, if we look back in the history of gold, we don't see a significant move like that in quite a while, right? So, just again, I'm going to continue to pay attention to this because it does mean that people might want to flock away from fiat or other holdings, maybe bonds, maybe treasury notes or stuff like that, into gold. And it could also be because these sort of things form a trend, and if we do see a trend forming, then more and more it's like a ripple effect, no pun intended there, with Ripple, the pseudo cryptocurrency. This is, I'm talking more about the actual trend in the markets where, it does create sort of a domino effect and people start pulling their money more into gold. And so definitely keep an eye on that. And it also ties into the rumor or the fallacy that people will, in such a crisis or such an emergency state of economics and finance in America, and worldwide too, but not so much. People will, in the state of emergency, flock over to cryptocurrencies and also gold. We obviously see and know that gold is definitely a hedge in times of urgency, but we don't know that about cryptocurrency market, right? And if so, if you have heard, let me make sure I am recording this, and I am. All right, and definitely wanted to make sure that. Um, Um, Sorry about that. I lost my train of thought. But definitely that's something that we have seen in the past. When these things happen, and so cryptocurrency is in my opinion not yet something that people will flock to officially as a way to hedge or to find a safe haven, because we know that Bitcoin is quite definitely a volatile asset still. Once we get into bigger numbers, once our market cap and Bitcoin's market cap in particular goes up into the trillions of dollars, and it starts to become a more significant and more widespread adopted asset, the price will stabilize. There'll be less volatility in the future. But at this point, I don't think people see it as such, especially the people in the traditional markets, people who have been investing in gold and maybe precious metals and or stocks, bonds, and that sort of thing, anything like that. Those kind of folks do not look at cryptocurrency as something that would be a good hedge for them. This is definitely more of a nuance. This is more of a new market for, in my opinion, not really. Not the baby boomers aren't really the a big fan of the crypto markets. Generation X's, which is the generation that I belong to, does look at this with a more open mind, and we look at cryptocurrency as a viable option. I don't think we mind the volatility that we see in cryptocurrency because we're still at a stage in life where we can afford a little bit more risk. So it is something that my generation does enjoy, and goes without saying for millennials. Millennials will be the ones to transition out of, in my opinion, transition out of the traditional markets and into a more nuanced market such as cryptocurrency, the cryptocurrency markets. And again, this market is so new that once we do see more projects, more viable projects, actual use cases, real life adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects that we'll see that sort of thing reflected in the actual capitulation or in the actual capital within the cryptocurrency market. So enough of that. Let's get into the charts. We'll start off with Bitcoin and taking a look at what it's doing. Kind of, sort of, it does have some of the right characteristics of an inverse or inverted head and shoulders. Some people, some of the traders that I follow as well, have been calling for this head and shoulders. At first, it wasn't looking like it was going to happen after this move here, but I mean, we've stabilized and we haven't really broken the 200 EMA here. If we do, I would say that we could abandon ship and say that that head and shoulders is not going to actually happen. But also the other thing is, it's also not very likely to happen because these type of moves. That's why I don't pay too much attention and don't put too much weight into these formations and patterns, because a lot of times, because it is still a reasonably shallow market, these things can be painted on by people and investors with bigger pockets. And so, I don't like to say that this sort of thing is something that that you can count on, right? So if you see a pattern like this, wait for confirmation. Either way, right? So in this case, we would see a sort of a run from here, because it is again an inverted head and shoulders. So we would see a run up, because it is again an inverted head and shoulders would mean that it is a bullish formation, and we should see something like that, or something like this, right? And that would be the resolution of that. But again, being relatively shallow market, things can be painted on by people with the ability to manipulate the market and make something or pretend to make something appear in the charts. So again, I would wait for confirmation. That's what I'm doing here. I do have a position open with Bitcoin, and I am waiting for a resolution on that. So I will be waiting to see what happens with that. But right now, it really it bounced pretty strongly off the 200 EMA here, and now it's touching the 100 simple here, right below it. It's definitely acting as a resistance up here. If we do break through it in the next couple of hours, I do think we're going to go back and retest the $12,000 range. Um, right over here, where we did set this line of resistance here in one of our prior videos. I'm definitely keeping it on my chart because I am watching out for that. If it doesn't break through, then we can definitely say that it will come back and retest the 200 again. And then maybe perhaps if it doesn't break the 200 at that point, um, which would present a very or a more bearish scenario there, which we'll talk about in a second. I do think it could retest this. If it doesn't, again, if it doesn't, we've tried it once. We've tried to break through it once. This could be the second try. And if we don't, there's two things that could happen, right? There's always a bearish and a bullish scenario. If we do get rejected from this area and bounce off the 200, we can retest this area around 12,000 and see if we break through it. If we do, then we can definitely look at 12,450 as our next target. And then from there, if we break it through again, we could go back and retest the 14,000. That is the more bearish scenario. Let's look at I'm sorry, that's the more bullish scenario there. Let's look at the bearish scenario. So if it looks like it wants to try and break through this 100 simple here and retest the $12,000 area, if we get rejected and come back to the 200, it should find initial support. But if we do break through to the downside on the 200, then I do start to get pretty bearish on that, and we'll definitely come back and retest the 377 around 10,000 flat. And if we do break this area, then we can definitely say that we can definitely go back. It is a possibility. It's definitely appears on my radar that we go back and fill the gap at 8,500, right around here. This area, this gap here, let me highlight it for everyone to see. this gap right here that was set back in June. Looks like actually it looks like June 17th, right? June 17th. So, relatively, hasn't been too long. There is no set time for these things to happen, but I do think we're going to fill it at some point. And this could look, I mean, it could do sort of the same thing that we're seeing here that Bitcoin did back in, let's just call it in this period of time, this period here. Bitcoin had a correction on June 19th, and it started to look like it broke the 200, right? And it started to look like it wanted to retest the 377. And it definitely found support way before that and regained the 200. And we made a nice, once it regained the 200, I mean, it rallied up all the way back to 12,250 area. So again, if we get rejected off the, let's go back here. There we go. If we do get rejected off this line of resistance here at 12,000, we can retest this, breach it, come retest the 377, and then finally, if we break through that, 8,500 will be our next target. If we do happen to break the 377, then this likelihood of filling the gap at 8,500 becomes more and more of a viable scenario. Okay, so keep that in mind. This could take the way it's looking. I mean, it's it definitely looks like consolidation, but it also looks like this could play out, right? This head and shoulders plus possible formation could potentially play out, but again, not too sure on it. The 100 simple is definitely acting as resistance. It still has to get through the 1200 and I'm sorry, yeah, the 12,000 and then the 12,500 or 12,450 levels before we can definitely say that this head and shoulders formation actually did play out. But traditionally also these formations, as I was saying, two things. These shallow markets are more easily manipulative, or the people are easy. Gosh, I lost my words here. Um, in these shallow markets, it is easier to paint and manipulate the charts to make it look like something's happening, and then you get certain buyers to buy into a certain formation, and that's when shit hits the fan. So, and then the other thing is, these formations don't usually pan out. Maybe a quarter of the time, so maybe about 25% of the time they do play out, and keep this in mind, 75% of the time they don't, right? 75%. That's a huge number. Um, and also it's 75% of the time they don't play out in traditional markets, right? We don't have enough data in the cryptocurrency markets, so just keep that in mind for your trading if you are trading over the weekend. Um, I mean, I just told you I am holding a position with Bitcoin, so hopefully we'll see the price definitely go up, and I do would appreciate it if this formation does actually play out. So we'll keep an eye on it. Let's look at XRP. XRP looks like more consolidation. Looking at the 2 hour, let's actually zoom out to the 4 hour. It did break this line of support here. And so this will be crucial. This will be crucial in my mind, because if we cannot regain this line of support here, then I do think, as I was said on my previous video, we could come back and retest the support line here at 32 cents. I did have this support line from my previous video. You can go back and look at it, and where I told you it did look like it wanted to retest this area of support, and perhaps if breached like it did right now, could come back and retest this area. I told you guys on my last video. Hopefully you watched it and you were looking out for that. I know some of you did message me about that, and took note. So good for you. It does look like it wants to again retest this. If we don't see it regaining some of its more bullish posture here by trading above the 30 simple at least. The 30 simple usually is an easy one to get through, but if it does not, then it starts to look more and more bearish. And it also depends if because this move here, this candle here is also correlated with what Bitcoin did in the same time frame, right? Bitcoin did have a bounce off the 200 EMA on the 2 hour right here, excuse me, and it got bought up and it had a nice move, a nice recovery move there. And we do see here XRP having the same reaction. So if it weren't for Bitcoin's move to the upside, I don't think we would have gotten this bounce from no man's land here. So we do have Bitcoin to kind of thank for this move to the upside. We're looking at the 2 hour now. It is trading above the 30 on the 2 hour, although it is a 2 hour. Don't hold too much weight on that. Let's look at the 4 hour again. We definitely want to see it trade above the 30 simple on the 4 hour and actually close a candle above the 30 simple. If we do get a close on the 4 hour with above the 30, we have Bitcoin to thank for that, and we do get a little bit more optimistic on the possibility of it reaching back into this trend formation again here. And then if we do that, then we can, start to take a breath again, and maybe it'll come back and retest this area. But it just depends on also even though that XRP has not been following on all the runs with Bitcoin, it depends if Bitcoin does go parabolic again, like in this formation kind of suggests right now that it could do based on this formation here that we were just talking about. If it does go parabolic again and comes back to retest the 13,900, then XRP would definitely be saved within that move, right? But right now, if Bitcoin stays stagnant, there is a higher possibility that we do go back and retest this area down here. Okay, so keep that in mind for you XRP Army guys, anyone who's a big fan of XRP. Um, keep a close eye, and also think about think about the opportunities that are out there. XRP is not the only thing that is tradable. I do like the liquidity in XRP personally. You can trade in and out pretty easily, but there's also opportunity costs, right? There's other coins within the top 10, top 15. Link perhaps could be a viable alternative for XRP since it kind of has taken the place of XRP. If you go back to 2017 and XRP was the hottest thing around, Link has kind of taken over that spot in the psychology of crypto markets. Taking a sip of water here. All right, let's look at BNB. BNB trading within this pattern here, starting to look. This was for my volume indicator down here. So we do see a diminishing volume here. It looks more like consolidation here. It is trading within these moving averages and staying put, sort of. It definitely does look like consolidation, but it also looks like a bull flag at the same time, right? Again, paying attention to these things, but not really believing and calling it outright. Although we do see here a bounce off this bottom support line, off the 377 and this channel. I mean, look at the convergence in support there. I mean, absolutely beautiful there, and bouncing right off of it, did going up above the not only the 89 EMA but also above this resistance trend line, and but not staying above it. So the fact that it's not staying above it tells me that if we don't regain it pretty soon here, we could come back and retest a lower low, and lower lows are not good, right? Lower lows are never good. And we are looking at a 4 hour. So these candles, whether they're closed, wherever they are closing, are pretty significant. And I do pay attention to those because it is a 4 hour and it does hold a little bit more water. So again, if we don't get a close, and we do see here this little tiny wick here above the resistance line, we should close, or we want to see a close on the 4 hour above this resistance line, and then we can start to turn around and maybe think of a more bullish scenario. But we do have plenty of resistance on the way up with all these moving averages, and finally up here the 200 simple. We definitely want to see the price action get close or above the 200 simple. If we do close a 4 hour, even a 2 hour above the 200 simple, then again, the scenario and the situation does change quite a bit. Also, for those 101s, those trading tips 101, um, this is also a valid formation, right? If we break through this resistance, usually you do have a pretty good move to the upside. Let's actually get a measurement here, and you can kind of tell where our next move or where the target is. Where Here you are. Okay, so if it does break, we could see Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, I'm sorry, BNB coin going. This will be our next target, 36.75. All right, so that look out for that. If it does break out, that could be your next target. And let's measure this move here. About 11% move, not bad at all. So that, not previously thinking about this, does kind of make me want to keep a closer eye on BNB in the next few hours to see if Bitcoin breaks out. Then you betcha, I think BNB could break out as well. It's definitely looking like it's on the verge of actually breaking out. No pun intended there either. And real quick, Dogecoin was announced, or was actually added to Binance Doge USDT, earlier today. And let's see, no, that's Bittrex and Doge USDT Binance. Here we go. All right, and it took a nosedive. I mean, just a massive nosedive. It's usually being added to Binance or Coinbase was like the golden cross, but in this case is acting like the kiss of death, right? You would think the opposite would be true, that when added to Binance, a gold with such a long reputation and big community would act in the opposite manner. But no, I mean we see the listing of Dogecoin in Binance have more of a kiss of death reaction, right? Don't want to spend too much time on that. Just thought it was worth mentioning for a couple seconds. Take a look at Litecoin. Looking at the 4 hour again, very similar to what BNB coin is doing. I do see here sort of a trend coming in, looking like it wants to flag out. Um, let's take a look. Actually, can come back down to this area here, and we see this acting as support. If we do break below this trend line, and we'll retest the 377, but below that, it would look very, very, very dim for Litecoin if we do break below these two trend lines. Okay, it definitely has more of a droopy, more of a bearish formation right now, but I mean that could change again. I look at Litecoins having a small reaction to Bitcoin's um, recent move here. Not quite as sizable as Bitcoin's, but it did go back to retest at 21, and it looks like it retested the 100 simple as well. We do again want to see it close a 4 hour, at least a 2 hour above these two guys right here. If it does, then we can start looking at a more bullish scenario. And certainly, if Bitcoin does again react to the formation, the head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders formation, then we can definitely start to get more bullish on Litecoin as well. And I know there's a lot of folks that are big fans of Litecoin. I myself am a believer in Litecoin. I do think it's like the typical saying, right? It's silver to Bitcoin's gold, right? Take another sip of water here. All right, so but overall, if we do see here that if we do end up seeing Bitcoin stabilizing and just sort of consolidating some more, then we could start to see Litecoin maybe retest the bottom support line here in the 377. If it breaks through, then it starts to look very, very dim. All right, and I believe I definitely want to go look at Link before we wrap it up. Link was doing this triangle formation as well, and it just usually these moves once they are about I want to say about 75 to 80% full, they tend to break out, right? But Link is just definitely consolidating here, and is what it's looking like. And we also have the volume to show for it as well. Definitely consolidating and um, just finding that it's pretty comfortable in these price ranges. So we might. I don't anticipate this lasting a whole lot longer. I do think we're going to get a move pretty soon. And this one shown to not really be very not shown to be something that's very correlated to what Bitcoin does. So I mean, this could pop at any moment, in my opinion, like it has in the past. Just depending on what the Link community wants to do. I do think again some consolidation is good, but we can certainly see a move upwards in the near future. As long as Bitcoin does not have a big dump, right? So that is all I have for you guys right now. If you want me to look at anything else, definitely leave your comments down below. Let me know what you'd like me to look at. I'll try to do another update this weekend. Um, but other than that, see you guys on the next one. Signing out, the real SHA 256. If you're not following me already, go ahead and go to my Twitter and my Instagram at the real SHA 256. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below so you get these updates. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Have a great weekend.